Namaskar and welcome to our continued coverage of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to China for the SCO summit. Also important bilateral meetings on the sidelines of the summit. Now, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization holds strategic, economic and geopolitical significance for India. The SCO gives India a place at the table in Central Asian affairs. Central Asia is, energy rich. It can play a key role in India's energy security and trade diversification. Considering India's tensions with both China and Pakistan, their being members of this grouping allows India to take forward indirect dialogue and regional cooperation. India, as we know, is already resetting its relationship with China. India collaborates on intelligence sharing and counter-terrorism efforts, especially against extremism and separatism. The SCO is a good forum for that. SCO's engagement with Afghanistan is also important, from India's point of view for security interests in South Asia. Then there is the International North-South Transport Corridor. It can improve trade routes to Eurasia. The SCO is an important non-Western dominated institution. It reinforces multipolarity and also that's important for India's strategic autonomy. India was chair of SCO in 2023. Now, before we move on, let's look at the latest headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi signals a reset in ties with China in talks with President Xi. Also meets top Politburo member Chai Chi. PM Modi reiterates his call, vocal for local, for a developed India in his monthly radio broadcast, Man Ki Baat. He lauds Jammu and Kashmir for successfully hosting the first ever Khelo India water sports at the iconic Dal Lake. There's trouble in Indonesia. The Indonesian lawmakers there are going to be facing sanctions following anti-government protests. The President Subianto, who has not gone for the SCO, demands crackdown on unrest. And in sports, at the US Open, Sinner survives a Shapovalov scare and Swiatek grinds past Kalinskaya to reach the US Open round of 16. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi held bilateral talks with the Chinese President Xi Jinping in Tianjin earlier today, congratulating President Xi for successfully hosting this SCO summit. The Prime Minister emphasized the commitment to taking India-China ties forward based on mutual trust, respect and sensitivity. He also mentioned the recent agreement between the special representatives of the two nations regarding border management. Prime Minister Modi appreciated the progress made on several fronts of ties and also peace on the border post-disengagements. He also spoke about the beginning of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra and touched upon the beginning of direct flight connectivity between the two countries. The two leaders last met in October in Kazan, Russia, on the sidelines of the BRICS summit.
Excellency, हमारे प्रेम जोशी भरे स्वागत के लिए मैं आपका हृदय से आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। पिछले वर्ष कजान में हमारी बहुत ही सार्थक चर्चा हुई थी। हमारे संबंधों को एक सकारात्मक दिशा मिली। सीमा पर डिसएंगेजमेंट के बाद शांति और स्थिरता का माहौल बना हुआ है। हमारे स्पेशल रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स के बीच बॉर्डर मैनेजमेंट के संबंध में सहमति बनी। कैलाश मानसरोवर यात्रा फिर से शुरू की। दोनों देशों के बीच डायरेक्ट फ्लाइट भी फिर से शुरू की जा रही है। हमारे सहयोग से दोनों देशों के 2.8 बिलियन लोगों के हित जुड़े हुए। इससे पूरी मानवता के कल्याण का मार्ग भी प्रशस्त होगा। परस्पर विश्वास, सम्मान और संवेदनशीलता के आधार पर हम अपने संबंधों को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए प्रतिबद्ध हैं। एथेंस चीन द्वारा SCO की सफल अध्यक्षता के लिए मैं आपको बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। एक बार फिर चीन यात्रा के निमंत्रण के लिए और आज की हमारी बैठक के लिए आपका हार्दिक धन्यवाद।
Well, during the bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Modi, the Chinese President Xi Jinping, he said that China and India share a historical responsibility to improve their people's well-being, support developing countries, and contribute to global progress. It is wise for both countries to maintain friendly, cooperative relations and support each other's success, symbolized by the dragon and the elephant coming together.
Is swept by one-centric transformations. The international situation is both fluid and chaotic. China and India are two ancient civilizations in the East. We are the world's two most populous countries, and we are also important members of the global South. We both shoulder the historical responsibility of improving the well-being of our two peoples, promoting the solidarity and rejuvenation of developing countries, and propelling the progress of human society. It is the right choice for both sides to be friends who have good neighborly and amicable ties, partners who enable each other's success, and to have the dragon and the elephant dance together.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met Chai Chi. He's a member of the Standing Committee of the Politburo of the Communist Party of China. And building on and in line with the leaders' meeting today, they touched on bilateral economic, political and people-to-people exchanges between India and China. Prime Minister Modi also held a bilateral meeting with the Senior General of Myanmar, Min Aung Hlaing. And we are joined by our correspondent Jessica Taneja, who is joining us from Tianjin. We also have with us a number of experts. Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, former senior diplomat, joining us from Delhi. Professor B.R. Deepak from the Center of Chinese and Southeast Asian Studies at JNU, also joining us from Delhi. And Subimal Bhattacharjee, an expert on technology aspects and also international affairs, joining us in the studio. Thank you very much, all of you, for being with us. Jessica, let me come to you. Now, India and China are both looking at this meeting with a lot of positive, outlook. What is the feeling on the ground there about this meeting? How is it being looked at in terms of its impact on the SCO? I'm talking about the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping.
Well, it was an important bilateral meeting by all means, Mark. If you see the developments throughout the day, this was on expected lines that he would be traveling to China for the SCO. The last time he was here, it was in 2018 he had visited Qingdao, which was hosting the SCO summit back then. And right before that, there was an informal summit in Wuhan as well. And now that we see, this is of course a momentum further to what we saw in Kazan at the BRICS summit last year, where the easing of tensions and the slow momentum that was built for it right when the disengagement pact was also signed. Now, if you talk about this meeting, it was of course on anticipated lines, and the discussions highlighted how trade connectivity can be enhanced. The Chinese side would want to bring in more investments, looking at the complicated geopolitical climate right now, especially for trade and other restrictions. It's important for countries in this particular bloc to come together and trade among themselves as well, and enhance that trade because of the proximity of the distance and of course the borders. Perhaps the issue of the border and the border question was also addressed. Both leaders, they did say that they'd acknowledge this special representative talks that have been taking place. You recall NSAG Doval was also in Beijing last year, and then we had Wang Yi visit New Delhi right before the summit began, to extend an invitation, of course, and also hold talks with his counterpart. And building on that momentum, we've seen this was, of course, on anticipated lines, as I said, but more importantly, many would say this was a step in the right direction, in a sense where you could, see the India-China ties improve slowly, but of course with certain caution, and hoping that the Chinese side would walk the talk when it comes to the agreements that have been put in place, especially when we talk about, other issues. But both leaders have acknowledged that there is peace and tranquility at the border. You heard similar views from NSAG Doval as well. Okay. So on that front, things are operating on a smooth level, but we'll have to wait and see on resumption of trade ties and also direct flights. There are certain modalities to be fixed. So overall, this bilateral engagement with the President of China has come at a time where it is dictated by the needs of both the nations, in a sense, to enhance trade, because China is India's largest trading partner, as China is for many other nations, but with a neighbor with whom it shares a 3,500 kilometer border mark.
So you talked about the border question, at least being satisfactorily looked at by the two principals, but you did mention that some of the other issues, trade, direct flights, Kailash Mansarovar, these are some modalities need to be worked out. What exactly, are the sticking points here, and how far? Because there are reports that suggest that these things are likely to happen soon, and that's what's being talked about as a reset in the relationship, trade through Natula and all that.
Right, and you talk about the border trade, the Nathula Pass, the Shipkila Pass. Well, that had been underscored and understood earlier as well. And just to tell you, the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra had resumed last month. Indian pilgrims were able to take that pilgrimage and were satisfied with how it's now picked up, because it was paused briefly after 2020. So that was a welcome move as well. When it comes to resuming direct flights, of course, that would increase people-to-people connect, as well as enhance business activity along with the trade that already exists. We had seen how things had smoothened over time, especially when it comes to China's control of rare earth minerals. The EV industry, along with the electronics industry, required those special magnets, and China produces 80% of them. It has the special machinery for those rare earth minerals in the world. So it was critical for India to have an agreement on those parts, and of course other modalities as well. When you talk about the resumption of flights, there are still some technical details waiting to be discussed and worked upon, so we'll get more details on that. Right now what we do understand is that that could be a possibility soon, but we'll wait for how those technicalities and modalities are worked out by both sides in due course of time, Mark.
Also, Jessica, could you tell us, what we can expect over the next hour in terms of the SCO summit and the opening?
Well, a possible, bilateral meeting between President Putin and President Xi. They are the founding members of the SCO when they started the bloc in 2001, focusing on counter-terrorism and, of course, enhancing a multipolar Asia, which also aligns with India's idea of the SCO. So that was important, and the Indian Prime Minister also held a bilateral with the Myanmar counterpart. So that was one of the developments of the day. We will see as to how, what are the technicalities as well as details we get from the bilaterals that the Indian side will have. Otherwise, we've seen the likes of Belarus president and as well as other leaders that have arrived for the SCO summit and have their own multilateral engagements based on their own security and economic agreements and needs.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Jessica Taneja, for putting that into context for us from Tianjin. Let me turn to our guests who've been with us as well. Thank you, Jessica. Let me start with Ambassador Wadhwa. You know, how does India's participation in SCO reflect a broader strategy of multi-alignment in geopolitics currently?
So, Mark, since 2017, since India has been a part of SCO, it's tried to make sure that the relationship with the SCO countries increases in all fields, especially in the three main pillars of the SCO. And India was particularly interested, of course, in counterterrorism and emanating from that the cross-border terrorism aspect. At the moment, we see that that aspect of the SCO is steadily being downplayed by the principals, which is China and Russia. By China, of course, because of the involvement of Pakistan, which papers over, not only in the here in SCO, but also in the context of the New York meetings and in the Security Council, and of course in terms of the other members of the SCO, it does not matter so much because they're not directly affected, except for Russia, which sees issues like counterterrorism and separatism and extremism also important to push. But there is a very mild kind of result every time the SCO meets,
right.
And a least common denominator, and that's what has happened to SCO. But of course, the SCO has taken the lead in many other aspects. And last time that India was a host to SCO, it put in its own agenda on digital technologies, connectivity, etc., and the traditional Indian medicine, plus innovation, which is injected into the SCO process. So that's taken its own course now, and of course, these are all of interest to all countries concerned. So India has set its own course in the SCO as a result of that.
Professor Deepak, to what extent, is India's engagement with SCO a sort of balancing between both Western and Eastern blocs? Is that some way of looking at it, where the way experts would look at it?
Absolutely. I think when Russia supported our candidacy for SCO, it was primarily because of this factor, because at that point in time, there was no limit relationship between China and Russia, and China was Russia was very, very apprehensive about China's footprints in Russia's backyard, that is the Central Asian republics, because of various, you can say, energy requirement and to fight against so-called like three evil forces. As Ambassador Wadhwa just pointed out. So that was one of the reasons. Of course, from Indian perspective, we wanted to have access to this area because we don't have any land access, and Russia encouraged that. But China also brought in Pakistan with it, and that created a little bit of problem as far as counterterrorism narrative is concerned, and it is there for everyone to see during Pahalgam. So that is one of the aspects, even though we are cooperating under the mechanism of RATS. But at this point in time, I think as people have been pitching that it is primarily because we are hedging against the United States. That may be a signal, but I think I see the rebalancing as your anchor told, from Tianjin, that it is a cautious and incremental rapprochement with Beijing, which is happening, since Galwan. Even if we talk about the kind of, dialogues we have had at cost commander level, and also WMCC. So there are many, so, altogether maybe exceeding more than 30 before we announced patrolling arrangement in Kazan last year. And multilateral engagement, whether it at ASEAN level or SCO itself, flurry of visits right from our NSA and then our foreign external affairs minister. It shows that we have been wanting to normalize this abnormal relationship during the time of disequilibrium. So I think it is a continuous process, and it is up to the West, which has said that Trump has pushed India to the Chinese camp, but of course I think there are many structural problems. I will be a bit cautious on that front. Over to you, Mark.
Talking about those structural problems, Mr. Bhattacharjee, what do you think? Do you think India should be expanding or looking for greater transparency amongst SCO members, looking for more themes to be discussed? Technology, for instance, where India holds some strength, can it all be brought into focus into this forum?
Sure. I think there's a lot of churning that is happening, even if you only take the tech sector. Ambassador Wadhwa just mentioned about the digital infrastructure points that we raised. But if you see, the moment we started the diplomacy around all cyber issues, DPI, big time after G20, and the way everything around the tech ecosystem is shaping up, you cannot ignore AI. AI is getting big time in global discussion. We have a larger point that is coming up, something called the global mandate for cyber issues, which was deliberated many times over the group of governmental experts and then OEWG in the UN, and finally last July, countries came to a consensus despite the differing position. But there is a big role ahead for countries to be able to work together to keep cyberspace secure and free. So I think the possibilities of tech, particularly where robotics, when AI and everything is going in a direction where you cannot always only bring a geopolitical factor, but you also have to see that how do you cooperate on the business front. Even from India's perspective, going to those 10 SCO countries with the capabilities around tech is absolutely paramount. With China, we have still such a huge deficit in terms of the business, about $99 billion. So how is there a way that we harmonize some aspects around tech that we can talk to, always not looking at it from a competitive point of view. So the way we will be holding the AI Impact Summit next year, the way we are going to push across AI and responsible AI across the world, I think SCO is also a good platform in which we make our position felt, because in every block we are respected for our capabilities around the tech sector and how we have responsibly played all along, whether it was from the simple classical computer coding to the artificial intelligence coding that's happening now.
Ambassador Wadhwa, so in 2023, when India was heading the G20, India was also in charge of SCO at that point in time. Do you see, India's engagement with all these groupings, even BRICS or Quad, G20, is there a lot of common ground in terms of focus, or would that be diluting focus if we try to bring all issues into all forums?
So each of these groupings, Mark, have their own dynamic, and they have their own agendas which they work on in particular. Once in a while, each of these groupings come up with one particular agenda which is new to to everybody. And for example, we just heard about the AI focus which is coming into all these organizations. But China has now a renewed focus on the World AI Cooperation Organization, the WICO. And at this particular SCO meeting, it will definitely push for countries to agree on some sort of a consensus and support for that. And I think given the fact that there's been some sort of understanding which has been reached now between India and China, one can expect that that idea will also come to a fruition. So I think what India is trying to do in the digital space, AI in particular, when it actually hosts a world meeting on AI, that will be a sort of complementarity that India and China could find with each other. And there, if you look at what's unfolding on the world scene, there is a sort of convergence between Europe, India, and of course, if the Chinese idea works along the same lines, but there is a little bit of divergence there with the United States. So how that will play out going forward will play up the contradictions that can come to the fore. But that still remains to be seen. However, I would say that in each of these organizations, India has its own set of interests. The security and cooperation with the other Quad countries, for instance, is different from how it looks at the SCO. India was pushing the G20 agenda, and also it was pushing the Global South agenda in the context of
Right.
the G20, and there it was playing the role of a spokesperson for the developing countries. So in each of these organizations, India has a different role, and I think they're mutually exclusive.
Indeed, Professor Deepak, talking about the voice of the global South and developing countries. In fact, in today's meeting, India and China, there was a reflection that both should be development partners and not rivals. How would you look at this also from the point of view of Prime Minister bringing up the BRICS Summit 2026 and the invitation to President Xi Jinping? BRICS, after all, is being looked at by the US in some particular context. This is a signal, perhaps, do you see? I mean, that India, China meet after the whole world is looking at this meeting. Then there's the invitation for BRICS, and then the support that China gives for India's leadership of BRICS next year.
Of course, if we see, respective positions of India and China, as far as Global South is concerned. So I think there is some similarity, and there are also various differences. As far as China is concerned, of course, it is pushing its larger foreign policy goal of building community of shared future, which of course was resonated by our Prime Minister, saying that if India and China, so they come together, so that benefits the humanity as a whole. And of course, we have our own Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which was projected, a winding force as far as Global South is concerned, from the Indian perspective. And China, I would say, apart from offering this community of shared future, it is also having, two major, you can say, foreign policy paradigms. One is that of building new type of international relations, which they have a separate parameters or different parameters for developing it with major powers. But as far as Global South is concerned, so they call it BRI countries. Of course, BRI countries, they fall primarily in the Global South, and China has initiated a whole lot of programs in can say Middle East, in Africa, and even Latin America. And moreover, China has, I think, advantage of being the largest trading partner of all these countries. And India, of course, since we work slightly on a different line. If China is vertically expanding or expanding in all these countries, so we wishes to have this horizontal expansion more closely related to the people through our say pharmaceutical industries, and selling the cheap pharmaceuticals in these countries, which are affordable. And I think others, of course, are in terms of India helping these countries in agriculture or various other programs. But I think here China wishes India that China would like to have India on board, but then primarily I think through SCO, it would be primarily, agenda driven by China. I think one thing which comes to my mind, and perhaps that would also be, one of the agendas of this SCO, that is establishment of SCO Bank on the lines of AIB and NDB, of the BRICS nations. So that I think important, which should interest India, as India was the founding member of AIB, and AIB has been beneficial for our projects internally and perhaps also Global South. Another thing I think which would be of interest, that of course is the capacity building in terms of like IT, which was brought out at this point in time, and also cybersecurity and various other things. I think these are some of the areas which I think India would be happy to collaborate with various countries in the Global South.
Mr. Bhattacharjee, there has been low trade volumes, isn't it, with the SCO? There's a lot of potential. India has been a member of SCO since 2017. In what way, can we unlock the trade potential between India and the SCO countries? I mean, beyond pharmaceuticals and the things that Professor Deepak was talking about.
Yeah, I think, Mark, if you see that the predominance of, say, China and Russia in SCO has been good as well as bad, as you can say. But the way everything is shaping up globally, and particularly, even if you look aside other geographies and try to see that in your region, in an aspirational aspect in which we are pursuing foreign policy, SCO is an entity that we cannot stay away from. So we have to get in there. I think we are making the right strides and steps in a very steady manner to get into that, and there are many areas in which we can cooperate, we can increase our trade, we can increase our delivery, which I think we touched a little bit. I think the tech area is one area that everyone still needs a lot of I wouldn't say support, but there's a lot of opportunities that can enhance their performance across the sectors. India's success stories with scale and very credible networks still offer a lot of opportunities for many of those countries to emulate and migrate steadily to the AI regime that we are talking about now. I think this is one area that we have to really get into. To a great extent, Mark, if you see, the tech has become now a major part of the geopolitics story. So a kind of impression was being built that everything from China has some bugs or something, all others are innocent, and only China is the only culprit in the room when it comes to anything digital platforms and all. So I think we all have to get out of it, because after all, the way the Chinese tech system and the overall ecosystem there has grown up in all these years, it is phenomenal. Despite all the efforts in US to restrict that, you are seeing even in this summit that all of that media area, it's all full of robotics for whether water delivery, whether answering any kind of queries you have. So their efforts with AI, their efforts with chips, their efforts about using this tech in many areas have come up so much that you have to talk, and definitely there are common grounds, and for our own security and stability we'll have to find a way to be working together even on the tech sector, because they are going to be big, we are going to be big.
Ambassador Wadhwa, we've looked at India and China, but what about India and Russia within SCO? After all, it was really at Russia's initiative that India was made a member in 2017. Of course, those were the days prior to the the Russians being sanctioned and different after 2022. But the point is that how does this relationship continue, India's strategic autonomy in the current times with regard to energy, defense ties and the like?
So, Mark, yes, bilaterally, the India-Russia relationship remains very, very important, I think, to both sides. And of course, energy is very much in the news right now, and because of which, the United States Trump administration in particular has been quite severe on India by slapping those extra 25% tariffs, and you've seen the result of the bilateral fallout which has happened as a result of that. But of course, besides that, I think it's the whole issue of involving Russia into the new areas of cooperation, and that means that India and Russia need to work together on the Vladivostok-Chennai route, for example, on connectivity. What India can do with Russia and use Russia's help for doing something in the Arctic, for instance, how to improve our relationship with Russia in the SME sector, invite more Russian involvement in some important high-tech industries in India. Given the fact that Russia today is engaged in the Ukraine war, this is not really a feasible idea to the extent that we thought of earlier. But of course, some thought needs to be given to that in the long term. And I think during the visit of External Affairs Minister, some of these ideas have been thrown about, the business delegations have met, and when President Putin is in India later this year, we will see more results in that respect. Of course, the defense relationship remains strong, and I don't see that diminishing in importance given the current circumstances. So overall, I think, besides energy, we have so many other fields that we can continue working on. And we just talked about the digital stack. There again, we've not done so much with Russia in the past. And there we can do a lot also with Russia because they are strong in innovation as well. In the startup sector, we can do much more with Russia as well.
Indeed. Professor Deepak, the prominent members of the SCO are RIC. It used to be an important grouping at one time, and also a significant portion of RIC is in BRICS. So the idea is now India obviously is playing a greater role in the SCO. And would you see India leveraging the SCO to sort of to cut down time with our relationship, to try and improve our relationship with the Central Asian countries, or there are logistical constraints, geographical constraints still?
Yes, I think there are geographical constraints, there are logistical constraints, irrespective of the fact that Russia remains very, very supportive of our participation in North-South, this transport corridor,
yes.
Including Chawar, right? So they have been very, very supportive from the very beginning. But I think here my take is slightly different. I still see that we should not write off United States, because if you see our trade volume with China and Russia put together, so our trade with the United States, it far exceeds, the combined volume with China and Russia. So therefore, I hope the talks are on with Mr. Trump, and there is a possibility that a trade deal is thrashed sooner or later, and perhaps this derailment of the relations is put back on the rails. So I think here, if we see our multilateral engagement, that is absolutely fine. There is no browbeating by any power, as it has been conveyed to certain people and countries time and again. But still, I think China and Russia, they are not the markets for India at this point in time. Right. And the West, including United States, they remain our biggest markets. And before we become sort of like a manufacturing province like China is today, having almost 35% of the global manufacturing capabilities, that is a long haul for India. So therefore, even if we have improved in certain sectors, for example, telecom, but we are still highly reliant on China. The interdependence with China, especially in short and medium term, it is immense, even electronics, which we also export. If we put together 49% of imports from China, and then further 4-5% from other countries, or 4-5 from Southeast Asia, so it becomes almost 62% interdependence on China. And so is the case with other things. I think as far as our multi-alignment is concerned, so it is excellent thing that we do it. If it happens, RIC, so that is good enough. But at the same time, I think as a principle of multi-alignment, we should not write off US at this point in time. So they remain our strategic partner. And there may be problems, short-term problems, but I think in long term, I believe that various cooperative partnerships in various areas, as we are wanting to have with Russia, so they are extended with the Western partners and allies.
Mr. Bhattacharjee, one of the most important aspects of SCO is counter-terrorism and intelligence sharing and things like that. Of course, this is also a very technology-driven space, isn't it? I mean, most of the intelligence is gathered today through the digital means. How robust is the system, would you think, that of intelligence sharing, and how much more can it be improved? After all, a lot of the cross-border terrorism also is happening in this region, and one of the members is a member of SCO itself.
Right. I think there's a lot to be done here, and how do you do it is the question. When it comes to tech, there are many dimensions you have to look at it. Ambassador Wadhwa had recently, just in his last intervention, mentioned about, with Russia, also some kind of conversations about tech and all has to be looked. Now, I must tell this because this gives us an opportunity to talk further. The first effort in United Nations to bring in the impact of tech on international security was actually a General Assembly resolution by Russia in 2004. Subsequent to that, the group of governmental experts was formed. The Russian gentleman was the chairman. 2009 again it was there, and it continued. So Russia had initially brought in the international security dimension of tech. Now everyone can see it, everyone can feel it, but since they had an impending interest then, and the way everything has evolved, I think if you juxtapose this with all the counterterrorism efforts and counterterrorism mechanisms that you have to do, it's a sensitive subject, but you will find a way where there is convergence to maybe share some level of information around tech, or when attacks happen, the country notifies each other, designated agencies talk to each other so that it doesn't spread to the other country, or if cyber attack emanates from the soil of one country, or that cannot happen. So these are some of the parameters on which the global mandate has been harmonized and agreed upon just in July. I think this is a great talking point for us as well as for them to be able to come to a understanding where you take incremental steps, but you are also slowly and steadily addressing the whole counterterrorism ecosystem. It's just not only the the dimensions of looking at non-technical issues and what position one takes. I think there is a lot intelligence that can be shared, and it will help each other. Sometimes states are not in control of what elements or rogue elements are doing something from their territory or their networks to a network in another country. Now that's where there would be real cyber crimes. If you just take the normal cyber crime dimension and all, I think these are low-hanging fruits on which we can start, build up that trust and credibility and move forward.
Indeed. Ambassador Wadhwa, so there is the issue of connectivity, then the physical connectivity with at least Central Asia. To what extent can this be overcome through the digital means and also with the need for energy? After all, these are great sources of energy, and India is looking for alternatives alternative markets and diversification as far as our energy sources are concerned?
Yes, certainly. So I think the connectivity with Central Asia is a cause of great concern because that remains a problem. India had hoped that by working on the international north-south transport corridor with Russia and Iran, that problem could be solved, especially after we could manage to bring in a number of countries around the Caspian into that organization. But thereafter, the sanctions that have been applied on Iran because of US pressure have set back a whole program of development of Chabahar. There are two elements involved over there. One is, of course, the development of Chabahar port itself as a transshipment hub, and after that, improving the infrastructure within Iran through the Caspian onto the Russian mainland. And the problems there also depend on how fast Iran can resolve them. The costs of stuff.
Right, Ambassador Wadhwa, I'll stop you for the moment. We are getting in some visuals. Prime Minister Narendra Modi being received by President Xi Jinping. Formal receptions are taking place for the SCO summit. Tianjin. This is just a short while ago. This has happened. Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And this, of course, is the group photograph also of all the other leaders who are participating in the SCO summit. There are several mechanisms involved in the SCO. Of course, there are the founding members: China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and then, of course, India, Pakistan joined in 2017, Iran joined in 2023, Belarus joined in 2024. Then there are observer country status. These are Afghanistan and Mongolia. Then there are dialogue partners: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Cambodia, Egypt, Nepal, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Maldives, Myanmar. And then there is the SCO Plus, which is also another mechanism. SCO Plus looks at both Southeast Asia as well as South Asia and the Indian Ocean region, looking at Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Nepal, and Maldives. We continue to stay with these visuals of Prime Minister being formally received for the SCO summit, and then the group photograph of all the dignitaries who are participating in the SCO summit. I did mention to you the countries that are involved, both member states as well as observer status and dialogue partners, and the SCO Plus countries as well. So, Ambassador Wadhwa, I had interrupted you, but if we go to the visuals that we just saw, now we look at the processes involved. You could help us understand this or demystify it for our viewers. You know, these kind of organizations, they have several mechanisms at play. Could you tell us a little bit about the SCO Plus and also the dialogue partners mechanism? Again, the host country, in this case China, plays a big role because they would like to invite the others who are supportive of their policies or with whom they can get some benefits of in terms of their policies of BRI, for instance. And that is one way of getting an interaction done, bringing them together under one roof. Of course, the question of observers, that whole process means that the observers can apply to become full members, and if there is consensus, then that membership happens. We've seen these two expansions of the SCO from the original core group of 6 with 4 countries joining. 2017, as you yourself mentioned, India, but it had to be balanced with the entry of Pakistan, and then the entry of Iran, which had to be balanced with the entry of Belarus. So in both cases, I think the interests of the
Russian and the Chinese, they sort of were balanced quite well. India in these organizations was not very keen on expansion, when these happened. After that, we've seen a parallel organization like the BRICS, for instance, where a huge expansion has taken place. So I think our outlook towards expansion of these organizations has changed a little bit. Going forward, India will also be interested in making sure that it has an interest in that expansion, because otherwise, it has, it just seems to be getting left out if the expansion is imminent. And when there is consensus amongst the rest of the parties, then it becomes even more difficult to stall that kind of expansion. There is an upside and a downside to this. The downside, of course, is that the organization becomes a little more unwieldy and very difficult to reach consensus. But this is the trend of these organizations, the way they are going at the moment. And India has to go along with that and try and build consensus.
Professor Deepak, you were saying that India should also not be looking entirely at the East. Of course, India is not looking entirely at the East. That's the whole purpose of a multipolar world. But, how would you be looking at the importance of a multipolar Asia, first of all, before we have a multipolar world? We're talking here about, at least in the SCO, and Russia, half of Russia at least, or more than that, is in Asia. So when we look at, the Russian and Chinese influence in SCO, now of course the Indian influence, how would you look at the multipolarity of Asia first emerging? And of course, Prime Minister, not to mention, had gone to Japan just before coming here.
I think as far as multipolarity in Asia is concerned, that remains a problem, as far as China is concerned, because it doesn't talk about multipolar Asia, even though it talks about, multipolar world. And I think that is aligned with its foreign policy from the very beginning, I would say. In Asia, it believes that, since there is disequilibrium between India and China, there is, a whole lot of asymmetries in the relationship. Therefore, according to the Chinese point of view, India has to earn that place. India is not very high up in the, I would say, foreign policy priority of China, to be very frank, maybe to displeasure of my countrymen. But that is the reality, that is the ground reality. And I think it is for this matter that we need to really, revamp our relationship with various other stakeholders in Asia. And of course, Japan's role in this has been very, very important. And the Prime Minister's Japan visit, it indicates the kind of direction or the kind of policy formulation so that could happen in India as far as diversification of relationship is concerned. I'm not saying that India has not diversified its relationship, but what I'm trying to say that India is not deeply integrated into the economies of Asia. So that we have to work on. For example, Southeast Asia, there are many stakeholders, but our engagement with Southeast Asia, as far as the economy is concerned, is very, very limited comparing China. If we do a little bit over $100 billion of trade with ASEAN, China exceeds $1 trillion. And also in our vicinity, I would say, in South Asia is the same story. And Central Asia is a little far, and we would have been happy if these energy routes could be secured. And there was a time when there was a talk of India, China, coming together as far as these energy routes were concerned. But I think that is just a pipe dream. I don't think China would be willing to transit some of the, gas pipelines or oil pipelines from Xinjiang to India. That would be a wonderful thing, if that could work out. If at all, we would like to build a great partnership, equal partnership, as Prime Minister said, that build on mutual trust, mutual respect, and sensitivity. But I think as far as sensitivity is concerned, so this is not bad, to be very, very frank. And this is visible when we talk about our border why border is a recurring theme. If you see the Indian statement and the Chinese statement, so they are poles apart, as far as border management is concerned. So therefore, I think as far as multipolarity in Asia is concerned, perhaps it has to be negotiated at bilateral mechanism by India with different stakeholders, including, of course, Australia. We are talking about the crux of this. Still, I would emphasize it is the economic integration, which I think it is lacking at this point in time. Over to you, Mark.
Right. Mr. Bhattacharjee, would you agree with that there is India has had a look east and act east policy. You yourself come from the northeast. You're aligned in a way to an act east policy. How would you look at, this impression that India has not done enough as well in the east so far to integrate?
Yeah, I think, Mark, it is still taking a long time for that integration to happen. Taking on from what Professor Deepak just mentioned, I think actist policy has been very assiduously pushed by this government, and in the process, the capacity building in the northeast of India, particularly in terms of infrastructure, has been really very good in the last 7-10 years. But as you were taking off, you saw what happened in Myanmar and then even in Bangladesh. So our gateway to ASEAN through both those countries, remains still very prominent. So despite many efforts with the ASEAN countries, it wouldn't have taken off in that optimal manner that we would have learned. But however, the engagements are increasing. Even next month, there is a Northeast India Festival being hosted in Singapore. So people-to-people connectivity, some amount of trade, something around the rice and its possibility of looking at the technology around excessive rice growth with Vietnam and all. Those kind of exchanges with the northeastern states have also happened. I think it's not a very easy space to see results in a very short span of time. We have our own capacity building further to do, and to be able to see that those countries also reciprocate, little bit leave aside the South Asia, but even in the ASEAN countries, I think these are the initial real footsteps that are happening, where Chinese predominance is very, very strong, and we'll really have to be competitive to be able to beat them and create our sweet spots. Not to lose sight of the fact that there are already avenues in which we see that our soft diplomacy is making an impact. So it's a journey that has begun. I think there is a long time to really see it at an optimal level.
Okay, taking this further in the SCO context, Ambassador Badwa, the SCO plus members are Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam. So clearly, Southeast Asia is very much on the agenda of SCO. To what extent, can India, with its, India of course has strong ties with ASEAN, and ASEAN as a grouping is also a rapidly growing area. It's also young, like India, and shows potential as a growth engine for the global good. To what extent can can India utilize SCO also as a platform to try and encourage this kind of development? India acting as a bridge in the sense for Southeast Asia as well as Central Asia.
So, Mark, I think unless we have a more robust relationship in the economic side with both Central Asia and with ASEAN, I don't see much of a scope of that happening, because as has been pointed out, the Chinese involvement in both regions, with Central Asia as well as with ASEAN, far surpasses what India has done. And here there are 2 or 3 reasons for that. One, of course, is that we are ourselves now undergoing a review of our FTA with ASEAN countries, which is taking a long time. and by the time that happens, we would be still at the stagnant level, I would say, because not much can be done in terms of bilateral goods exports and imports without solving that issue. What we can look forward to, however, is increasing investments both ways. And that there is some movement. Of course, we've been unfortunate because of the situation in Myanmar and Bangladesh, as was pointed out by Mr. Bhattacharya. But the same thing has happened, as far as Chabahar is concerned with Central Asia. So with these odds, the only way to move forward, in my view, would be to relook at joining an organization like RCEP, for instance, which India had rejected in the past. And the reasons at that point in time were because of the rules of origin, which procedures and provisions in that which were quite weak as far as India saw it, and the fact that China was swamping these markets, and that the fear was that it would use Southeast Asia further for dumping goods into India. Now, in the light of what has happened recently between India and China, when India itself is looking at relaxation of Note 3 with the neighboring countries in certain kinds of investments, I think that kind of relook must be taken. And the economic aspect of the relationship with ASEAN countries needs to be strengthened much more. India has an advantage of the cultural linkage, and the soft diplomacy has done very well with Southeast Asia. So it has to be leveraged in that sense. And I was happy today to see a meeting between the Prime Minister and the Senior General Min Aung Hlaing of Myanmar, because in terms of the trilateral highway, the whole question of trade with Southeast Asia and connectivity is held up because of the situation in Myanmar. So we have to find some solution, and I think India should work towards a solution of the political reality in Myanmar if that has to actually fructify.
Indeed. Let's take a look at, the SCO agenda. We have a few graphics coming up on our screen in a little while. So the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit is being held in Tianjin, and this year's theme is Upholding the Shanghai Spirit, SCO on the Move. So the host country, China, has declared 2025 as the SCO Year of Sustainable Development. The summit has leaders from more than 20 countries and heads of 10 international organizations in attendance. It will review, in fact, 25 years of the organization's achievements. The SCO is to adopt a 10-year development strategy. Now, China is hosting the summit for the 5th time. So that's a little bit of a context. Now, let's look at the agenda and priorities to be discussed at the summit. Regional security. The leaders will meet to strengthen partnerships on law enforcement and counterterrorism. It aims at a joint action against extremism and cross-border crime. It also aims to promote trade between member states, a multilateral trading system, and to advance regional transport connectivity and digital economy collaboration. SCO is also hosting various forums on poverty reduction, urban development, and sustainability. And they're also encouraging innovation in health, environment, and urban modernization. So the SCO is going to give a boost as well to youth exchanges, academic partnerships, and collaborative cultural programs. Under the SCO, convene exhibitions celebrating shared heritage and deeper mutual understanding. These are also going to be held. So looking at that broad agenda, Professor Deepak, to what extent do you think that, they've covered all the key points that the SCO, is moving beyond, let's just say, a security relationship?
Yeah, of course, that was, very much evident from even, 2018 summit they conducted in Qingdao in Shandong province. It is transiting, from security-oriented, counter-terrorism-oriented to, I would say, so multifaceted exchange. And of course, this is in alignment with China's overall foreign policy and also is, I would say, the domestic implications. Because we have seen how China has transited, from a factory of the world now to, they call it high quality development represented by this AI, digital governance, digital health, and also clean energy, electric vehicles, so on and so forth. And China has controlled the supply chains in these high quality development area. Also, in the entire world is importing from China, and China is happy, to collaborate with even its European counterparts, and they have been forced sometime to levy 25% of the duties or maybe even more on goods coming from China. So it is in this context that China has been opposed to unilateralism or protectionism and sort of like initiating re-globalization. So China has emerged at this point in time as the one which has given the indication that it is the country which is driving globalization or re-initiating rather globalization or unilateral globalization. And I think this is what is appealing to the global south also, because these are the countries which are poor, which would like to have products and maybe capacity building programs from China. And China is very happy, to help them out. So I think here, if we compare it with India, so I think we don't have, these kind of maybe manufacturing capacities at this point in time. So we should be building before we transit, to the Chinese model. Of course, I'm not trying to say that we should be replicating Chinese model, but I think this is high time that we make long-term plans, as China has made it for SCO, 10 years long-term plan. I think in context of Japan, we have done the same kind of thing, whereby we would be inviting in almost $68 billion of investment from Japan to India. So I think these are some of the things perhaps we need to take into account on multilateral setting and perhaps build a long-term strategy. So that's what, as far as SCO participation from India is concerned, I still think that it remains very, very optics centric rather than a long-term strategy. I hope we build a long-term strategy in order to realize.
Let's try and understand what we can do to build that long-term strategy. Mr. Bhattacharya, you can see that there is what they are looking to do this time is to promote trade between the member states and a multilateral trading system, that is, and also to advance regional transport connectivity and digital economy collaboration. Do you see a time frame for this kind of objective? As Professor Deepak was saying, I mean, all these are good objectives, I mean, to improve trade, but how?
I think this still remain low-hanging fruits, whether it's the transport connectivity or the digital connectivity. And I think this has to be really taken in stride, and the countries have to push. See, there is no great power game that happens in these two particular areas. So I think these are clearly chosen, and you can have measurable progress. Question is that where does all the funding come from? Where does the ecosystem take over? You build the infrastructure, but what you are supporting it for? And is the market ready to immediately utilize these things? I think on the digital front, definitely there is a lot of possibilities as more and more avenues move to the digital ecosystem, or maybe even you can use the word more conveniently today, AI-enabled ecosystem. So there are lessons to learn from almost every country, but people who have successfully implemented them, people who have done it in a very credible and transparent manner, using the open systems and programming and practices, I think there is an opportunity for others to imbibe, and that's a strength that India has on this. So the thrust on digital public infrastructure, the thrust on AI that now MEA itself has quite a significant presence in terms of the diplomacy around the cyber issues and everything. I think there is an opportunity to look at the economic dimensions of the digital technology as well as the strategic dimensions also, so that we have a secure digital economy system.
Indeed. Ambassador Wadhwa, there is on the agenda, to look to boost youth exchanges, academic partnerships, collaborative cultural programs, convene exhibitions celebrating shared heritage, deeper mutual understanding. How important is this, for the grouping to get to know each other a little better and to take the other long-term goals away from, just government-to-government models and also bringing people-to-people models into it?
Yeah, so actually, youth exchanges was an idea introduced by India when India was the host to the earlier SCO summit. And the Buddhist heritage, by the way, was also introduced by India. Now, these have been brought in to exactly, as you said, to improve the people-to-people exchange because not much is known, for example, in India about some of the Central Asian countries and vice versa. And of course, there is air connectivity, so tourism has increased quite a bit, but at the same time, a lot of people in both countries don't visit each other that often. And to enable them to know each other, understand them much better, and what their strengths in the society are, it's very important that the youth get involved, in this kind of a program. So in future years, if there has to be cooperation between these countries amongst each other, then they should be able to, utilize on that basis. So that was the idea behind it. I think it's good that it's been kept on the agenda. It's non-controversial, and at the same time depends a lot on what countries themselves want to do, how much they want to showcase, and what aspects they want to showcase about each other.
Professor Deepak, what about the academic partnerships? How would you look at that in terms also of Indians interested in the East? You yourself have been teaching Chinese studies and Chinese language, I presume. So this is, is there enough interest in India for these subjects in the future and this region as a whole?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think there is a lot of interest in India as far as, building capacities in China studies are concerned, and also to build capacity in language itself. And I'm proud to announce that, the JNU has been one of the prime institutions to build capacities in both languages as well as studies. And it has moved from Delhi to pan-India level, whether it is Gujarat, whether it is Sikkim or Northeast Tejpur, or South in Mahatma Gandhi Antarashtriya Hindi Vishwavidyalaya. So more than 20, I would say, central and state universities, so they have these programs running. But I think as far as Chinese involvement in these programs is concerned, is very, very minimal. I would say that it is almost zero. There is no academic exchange. Maybe in some of the private universities, which are not counted in the list which I just told. So there may be some of the programs we run with the Chinese faculty, but then after Galwan, everything has come to a grinding halt. Visas have not been issued to these people. In fact, some of the projects, in one of the projects I was heading, that is the mutual translation project of India and China. So that got stalled because of the Galwan, and I hope once these MOUs, they are renewed or they are continued, this project is also given a green light. And more importantly, I think, we have already had two meetings of the high-level people-to-people exchange mechanism, which is an extremely important exchange mechanism between India and China. And I hope, the next meeting, the last I remember in 2009, it was held in India. So the next, hopefully, it would be held in China. And that also sort of like umbrella, which brings together youths, academicians, students, and civil society, is quite a wonderful mechanism. I hope all these things, they are revived, and perhaps, better understanding between India and China would be created. At this point in time, I think there is a problem because we don't understand each other quite well. And I think sometimes I feel that from the Indian side, there is sort of like inertia towards that in the understanding. I hope this warmth and reset, it normalizes that kind of process, those kind of processes which have already been initiated by the government.
Mr. Bhattacharjee, you want to weigh in on this because you're talking about interpreters and getting to understand each other, and now technology has taken over, isn't it? I mean, they're doing the job. In fact, I use my phone just to figure out what people are saying in another language.
In fact, you would have seen that robot. It can
at the SCO there is a robot that speaks Russian and
not only it can translate in 15 languages.
Right.
So you ask a question in a language and it will answer you in the language you want. So this is what technology has done. Even when our G20 was held, we had AI-based interpretation of languages that was possible even here. So I think these areas are evolving, but to go back to what Professor has just mentioned, I think there is to be a lot of academic conversations, maybe joint projects, publication. There is a lot to benefit on both the sides, at least I feel, across the sectors. Look at climate and environment. It's such an area that whatever Trump might come and say that you go back to fossil fuels and all, but look at the other areas in which the electric vehicles and the battery technology and everything, where the Chinese have gone ahead so much, and we also have our islands of capabilities. These are areas where going back to what the Chinese president also said at the beginning of the meeting, that for both our people these are beneficial. So I think there is to be the academic and the industry linkages, Mark, that unless it is fostered, we don't have real avenues for looking at newer areas to keep a continuity even when things might not always be good. These are areas in which we benefit each other.
Indeed. Ambassador Wadhwa, to what extent has technology come into the space of diplomacy to help us understand each other better? I mean, after all, you all use the old method where you actually learnt the language, learnt the culture, learnt everything. Is there, a fast forward solution here which is also dangerous in some way?
Well, I think it has to be a combination, and I think the old methodology needs to be combined with the new one in order to make sure that you can achieve much more in that time frame and with the same effort that you put in. Now, some of the areas where AI can help a lot, for example, is in digitization of archives, and also, making sure that the archives match each other, because that's a tedious kind of process. In the case of India and Mongolia, just to give you an instance, India has been working on a project now for the past 7 to 8 years, which is a very important project. But if you had the advent of AI at that point in time, we could have finished it much faster. And similarly, the similar effort needs to be put in with a country like China, for instance, which helps in our Buddhist studies, which helps in our linkages of the past, which can actually lead to many new collaborations. Now, as far as language is concerned, going back to the language issue also, if you have AI-aided tools, they can, of course, make life much easier for people who want to learn. and then the traditional method. So we have, these methodologies which have come in now, which needs to be combined with the traditional methodologies that we used to have in the past.
Indeed, Ambassador Deepak, I'm sorry, Professor Deepak, when we look at what is, a lot has been talked about because Prime Minister went to Japan first and then came here, and a lot is expected out of this SCO summit. What would you say, I mean, is going to be the key? We look at it from the expectation point of view because it's still expectations. In your mind, from this SCO summit for India?
Yeah, I think it's a very good beginning. It's a very good beginning, very good, I would say, recalibration by the Indian side. And I think we should be participating. We should be on the high table, whatever multilateral mechanism or forum is. And as I said that, there is a possibility of establishing this SCO bank, which would be of a lot of interest for India. And also, given our trade or the structure of trade with China, irrespective of that, I think there are a lot of complementarities which we need to tap. Both sides perhaps need to work in this direction. And the meetings, I hope it augur well in addressing our sensitive issues, and both of us, they move forward with a renewed energy, or the Chinese say that, to inject positive energy into our bilateral or multilateral dialogues.
Indeed. Mr. Bhattacharjee, how would you look at the SCO summit and the emerging trends? After all, we looked at the agenda, it's quite broad-based. And also, given the fact that India is a young country, now the most populous country also, to what extent is this, being harnessed in terms of our policy objectives?
Yeah, I think, this is the 25 years of SCO, and they are going to have a 10-year roadmap. So I think it's the right time, that we are recalibrating and getting into the system. As we have spoken, there are clear areas in which, we have our strengths. We have many nations within the SCO bloc who would be absolutely receptive to what we can offer, particularly around, technology, the digital technology part. So I think that's a good beginning to take steady steps and get into the bandwagon a little bit more effectively, knowing still very well that, you have China and Russia who still, have a much larger footprints there and for quite a long time. So I think we know how we have to carve our space. We have to be watchful, and this is a point of time that, the Prime Minister's visit, even if you look, it was undertaken in a very, if I may use this word, smart manner. He went to Japan. There also we have now a 10-year relationship carved out with about $68 billion in terms of private sector investment. So now in SCO, in that 10 years, what is it that we create for ourselves? What is it we delve ourselves in? I think there is an opportunity to see, balance each other, see how we make the impact. So I think it's a very, very positive and a prudent move.
A final word from you, Ambassador Wadhwa. How should India navigate, ideological and strategic differences within SCO? And should India also be bringing to the table the idea of reforms, of all multilateral institutions as we continue to do in other forums?
So I think India has to look at this as a forum where, as a platform where the bilateral interactions are useful for India. Today itself, for example, we've seen how Prime Minister Modi has renewed contacts with China, with Myanmar, with a couple of countries now of Central Asia, Tajikistan, for example. And all those contacts help a lot. On the agenda before the SCO, most of this is a generalized agenda. But what does cause India some consternation is the fact that because of the inclusion of Pakistan and because of China shielding Pakistan, we've not been able to make much concrete headway in terms of terrorism in particular, which is one of the main planks of the SCO. So that's worth reminding the other members about, the original aims with which the SCO was founded. On the new items on the agenda, of course, connectivity, environment, the new technologies, investments and services should be our focus. Because out of the SCO process, each country will look at what it can actually achieve for its own benefit. And India should do the same. Of course, in areas where we have a conflict, we just have to make sure that we navigate, as you said, quite, dexterously. And wherever it's not feasible to cooperate with the SCO countries, we will have to just dissociate ourselves.
Indeed. We leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, former senior diplomat, Professor B.R. Deepak, Center for Chinese and Southeast Asian Studies at JNU, and Sumibal Bhattacharjee, IT and technology expert with international focus. Thank you, all three of you, for being with us on this program. As India continues to assert its voice in global forums, the SCO remains a critical arena for balancing interests, projecting influence, fostering regional cooperation. Now, our guests have helped us understand India's foreign policy ambitions, also India's vision for a multipolar world. We hope you have benefited from this discussion and our coverage of Prime Minister Modi's visit to China. Until our next update, thank you very much for watching. Namaskar.